Welcome to the No Podcast with me, Nikki Spo.
Let's boundary the fuck up. What is up, truth speakers and light seekers? You are listening to The No, where it is not about knowing everything. It is about coming to know ourselves. And it's not as self-centered as it sounds. I believe that when we really know ourselves and when we honor our deepest sense of inner knowing, that's when we can be of maximum service in the world and to those around us. I'm your hostess, Nikki Spo, and I am the biggest work in progress ever, sharing parts of my journey with you so that we all feel less alone and hopefully more capable and courageous. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe to the show on whichever platform you're listening in on so that you never miss an episode. We are having some really important, beautiful, tough, educational, and healing conversations here, and I want you to always be, well, in the know, you know? All right, so something I've really worked on over the years is boundary setting. Now, let me be crystal clear. I have not always been a boundary acceptor. Like, people have tried to set boundaries with me and I have trampled them. But like I said, I'm that work in progress, and I like to think that I am a retired boundary trampler. But I know better than to go that far. So maybe you're in the same boat. Maybe you haven't always respected the boundaries of others. I think awareness is the first step. And I also think that practicing setting your own boundaries can be really helpful in learning how it works. So let's get started with boundarying the fuck up. Okay, so I'll begin here by briefly covering some of my personal experiences with boundary setting. So I think that when we are children, we live in a world where we are learning the boundaries around us for us, as in our parents or caretakers are showing us what our boundaries are. I believe that this is a healthy and appropriate part of life. And as a parent now, I realize how important it is that I show my children what their boundaries are so that they may move freely within those boundaries and learn how to make choices. As we grow more autonomous in our lives throughout our adolescence, it seems natural that we would continue to test those boundaries as we learn more about ourselves, our preferences, and our curiosities. I think a lot of people who grew up with any type of abuse in their homes as children can relate to the feeling of having inherent boundaries crossed, boundaries on your person, on your physical self, and consider the impact that that may have had on the development of our personalities and our emotional makeups. So to speak for myself, I now understand that my previous disregard for boundaries and rules in general likely had a lot to do with the fact that my rightful boundaries had been crossed in ways that were manipulative and hurtful. I grew to learn that boundaries weren't even a thing. Boundaries what? What boundaries, right? So as I grew up, I ignored boundaries as a teenager and later as a young adult. And by ignoring parameters in my life as a whole, I came to tolerate more and more of my own personal boundaries being completely overridden and disrespected. And I sort of came to view that that was the way that life should be. So the thing is like somewhere deep inside of myself, I knew wholeheartedly when my boundaries were being crossed. For me, it happened a lot in the form of secret keeping. And I knew that secret keeping for me was a blow to my soul. And throughout my life, I have been asked to keep many, many secrets for other people, which chipped away at my essence and made me question my value and worth in the world. And thus began a vicious cycle of soul breaking, requests for boundaries or improvement, and then rageful anger when my boundaries were repeatedly crossed. So learning boundaries was and sometimes continues to be a hard lesson in life with me, which is why I think it's so important that we talk about them. So with that said, I want to cover what I believe are some fundamental topics to have boundaries on and around. What are some examples of healthy boundaries? First, I would say your autonomy as a physical body. When it comes to your body, no means no, yes means yes. But the absence of no does not mean yes. I want you to think about that. Just because you don't say no doesn't mean that that means yes. For example, if you're at a tattoo parlor with a friend who's getting a tattoo and the tattoo artist turns to you and says, "Can I tattoo you?" and you do not reply, that does not give the tattoo artist permission to tattoo you. Are you following? That considered, as an adult person, it is your responsibility to set boundaries with your body. It's okay if your limits make other people uncomfortable. These boundaries that you set for yourself are put in place to keep you safe and help you operate in the world in a more peaceful and pleasurable way. As a child, we are taught what boundaries look like, which is why, for parents, it is so important that we demonstrate healthy body autonomy and boundaries with our children. Next, I would say that we need to set boundaries with our emotional needs. I used to be so afraid to rock the boat, and I used to think so little of myself, really. I would have sacrificed my whole identity if it meant that someone would love me. I used to fake my emotional neediness, if you will. And today I am very direct about what I need and want from an emotional standpoint. I am also very clear about how I prefer to handle conflict. I am the type of person who likes to address things in real time, head on, and I do not shy away from having difficult conversations, which I have to admit has not always been easy, because when we're dealing with other people, we have to be cognizant of their boundaries, which might not always align with our own. But it is my belief that we should be upfront about our emotional needs, and it's better to find out sooner than later who can show up for you and who can't, who can respect your conflict resolution style and who can't, who can give you space or presence when you desire it and who can't, who can be sensitive about certain topics with you and who can't. Next, I would say, this is a big one for me, the ability to stay true to your sense of self, spiritual beliefs, and passions. This is a big one that I've struggled with to set boundaries on. So clearly, because this show is about finding and celebrating our deepest sense of inner knowing, it's safe to say that I had a sort of great awakening in this department. I won't say much about the specifics of it, but you have to be able to be yourself with the people that you love. You can definitely change and improve on behaviors within yourself. And I believe that self-improvement is awesome. And I am actually of the belief that people can change for the better. This has been revealed to me time and time again by witnessing people get and stay sober. A lot of people say you can't change, but I disagree. I think that people absolutely can change. And there's a beautiful change that can happen. So yes, we can always improve. But who you are, your essence, what you love, your spiritual beliefs, and what you are passionate about, those are yours. And you should never have to break those for anyone. This is a hard boundary for me. And sometimes, guys, the boundary for this is simply walking away from people who refuse to accept you, because you shouldn't have to convince anyone to love you for who you are at your core. Next up, I would say that ownership and agency over your financial assets. So I think women in general, we get all nervous when we talk about money, but I think the more we talk about it as women, the more comfortable we make other women in talking about it. So I've talked about money during my 3-week money series. If you want to revisit those are episodes 31, 32, and 33. And I'm bringing it up here because, well, most of my audience consists of women. And I think that for better or worse, women are prone to financial manipulation for a multitude of reasons, which I could spend an entire episode on, but which is not for today. And while I don't have a statistic on this, it is my opinion based on life experience and observation and hundreds of conversations with women of all walks of life that women are susceptible to financial manipulation. That's not to say that men aren't, because we all know that they 100% are. But for the point that I'm personally making here, y'all, I am talking to and for the women. It's time to take ownership of our finances. You should know what you have. You should know what you share in the event that you have a partner that you share income with. You should know what premiums you're earning or paying for at your bank. You should know what's going on with your 401k. You should know, period. We don't do vague. We don't do unclear. The boundary is, in order for me to blank, then I need to have blank information. The boundary is and sounds like this. Information about my income is private, and I do not welcome your feedback on how I spend my money at this time. The boundary is and sounds like, this is mine, that is yours. I will handle mine, you will handle yours. The boundary is and sounds like, we should discuss a family plan for spending and stick to it. The boundary is and sounds like, whatever you make it, my loves, whatever you make it. You guys, this is like, I'm not saying that these are the boundaries you should have. I'm saying that these are examples of what they can be, and it's up to you to really decide what that sounds like and looks like. All right. Other important boundaries in my book are the ability to prioritize personal time for self-care, retaining the right to change your mind and preferences. I also reserve the right to be wrong. I reserve the right to be an imperfect person and make mistakes. And when I do so, humbly and lovingly try to right my wrongs. Another important boundary is having alone time with no distractions or interruptions. And this can be really important for moms, especially when we are inundated with children and their needs nonstop, creating time to be alone with no distractions and no interruptions. Now, here are 3 straightforward tips that I have for setting boundaries. These are quick and pretty easy to follow. First of all, know that you don't have anything to prove. 2, understand your needs. And 3, communicate your boundaries in a kind but firm way. You can express your limitations and parameters in a way that feels authentic for you while still being kind and firm. Practice doing this with trusted friends or advisors or therapists. Ask for help if you're not sure. Seriously, like ask somebody that you trust. Hey, can I practice this? How does this sound? Tell me what you would feel like if I said this. Practice with people you trust. So, what are some unhealthy boundaries? I think that unhealthy boundaries involve a disregard for your own and others' values, wants, needs, and limits. And the lack of them, in my experience, can also lead to potentially abusive dynamics. And even considering that, I 100% feel that it is our responsibility to set boundaries and uphold them. We cannot expect people to read our minds or just go off of our vibes. Communication is important. And the way that I see it, boundaries are a way of keeping loved ones in your life, not out of your life. A former guest, Evelyn Mendal, who is a licensed mental health counselor who focuses on parent coaching, gave me a great example in one of my earliest episodes. She explained a scenario in which, imagine this, we are at the top of a very, very tall skyscraper in the open air, and there are no guardrails, right? If you were on such a building, you would likely stay like right in the middle. I would personally lie flat on the floor and not move, or at the very least, like curl into a tiny little ball and stay like right in the middle. Either way, I'm not moving. But if that tower or building had firm guardrails or a fence or a wall around it, I would be free to move about that area safely. That's the impact that setting healthy boundaries can have in our lives. There's a tremendous amount of freedom within boundaries that are set in place. I want to stress that I also believe in the co-creation of boundaries. Life is ultimately about how you spend your time and whom with. So it's natural that in relationships of all kinds, we would co-create boundaries. You can create them within your relationships and also for how your relationship itself will operate in the world around you. This requires honesty, vulnerability, and the willingness to hold space for others to be their authentic selves without judgment, but instead with curiosity and collaboration. You guys, I love learning and implementing these practices right along with you. I don't know everything, but I am committed to growth and healthy living. I hope that you've gotten something out of this episode today, and I know that you probably know someone who needs to hear this today, so go on, share it, and obviously, again, shameless plug, leave a review if you fancy it. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Nikki Spo Unveiled. Over and out, my loves. Thank you so much for listening to The Know. If you loved this episode, go ahead and share it with a friend. Words are so powerful, and someone may need to hear what we covered today. And if you really loved this episode, please take a moment to rate the show and leave a review. Your comments are so important and valued, and they give other listeners insight on what to expect on The Know. You can connect with me personally via Instagram at Nikki Spo and The Know with Nikki Spo. My hope for you today is that you are fearless in looking inward so that you can be your highest, most authentic self and go after the life of your dreams.